Hello, and welcome to
Bell on Earth.
My name is Cassidy,
My name is Casey.
and together we are the Bell Sisters. Join us each week as we corrupt your soul,
And bring you to salvation.
discussing life, death, and everything in between.
Are you afraid of getting into heaven?
Anyway, what I was going to say is that I totally agree with everything that you said. I think that's kind of where my antinatalism sort of started, is more about the fact that, like, there are a lot of man-made suffering and, like, man-made horrors that exist that I don't know if it's possible to reverse them. And I think that's where I'm like, ooh, like, I don't know if I could ethically bring a child into this world. Again, like, when I say I'm anti-natalist, I say it like literally just for myself. Like, I don't believe it, again, in telling anyone else what to do. Like, I don't think that it's unethical for other people to bring kids. I don't, like, care really what other people do as long as they're not harming others.
Yeah.
But for me, personally, like, I don't think that I could personally bring a child into this world knowing that they are going to have to work a 9 to 5. Not that you have to, right? But, like, that they have to make money and that they have to suffer climate change. I would literally rather opt out than have a child as an influencer.
You don't want them to be a creator?
Girl, no. I'd be embarrassed. As, like, we have a podcast. Like, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, I'd literally be embarrassed.
I am embarrassed.
Yeah. Like,
Am I gonna stop? No.
No.
But are we embarrassing? Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, get that bag.
Exactly.
Even though we don't get a bag at all.
But, like,
We're
that's...
poor.
Yeah. Just a little adage. If y'all want a Patreon,
Donate.
just let us know, yeah. Anyway, but that's, like, kind of where my stances come from. It's just, like, I personally could not bring a child into this world and have to know that they have to, like, do all the things that I'm doing, and, like, I already don't like doing all the things that I'm doing, so why would I make another person do that?
This is very true.
And at the same time, I think that if it were possible to eliminate a lot of the man-made suffering that we do have, then I think my views might change in that perspective, because, like, I think that most of the stuff that I personally disagree with on this earth is stuff that we literally impose onto ourselves for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, it's stupid that we have to, like, live these lives and, like, do these things that make us so severely unhappy, and, like, that we have to watch everyone around us suffer and, like, be living in poverty, and that we have to have children who are hungry, and, like, we have to watch people drop bombs on each other. Like, I don't want to see that, and I don't want my children to see that either, and so I'm not going to bring them into this world so that they can fucking experience that, because that's not fair. Whereas, like, if that stuff was then eliminated and that stuff didn't happen and we lived in a more of a utopia, maybe not a perfect one, but something that at least made sense and was maybe more like the animal kingdom, where suffering was not necessarily necessary, but it just kind of happened and it wasn't so unnecessary, I guess. Like, it was just something that was kind of a fact of life. Like, then I'd be kind of more inclined to have children. But at this point in time, like, I don't see that being as an option, and I don't see it as being ethical for me to then bring children into this world so that they have to watch all of the things that I have to watch and feel the same pain that I have to feel all the time.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that, like, antinatalism in itself is definitely rooted in more of a, dare I say, like, realism type of viewpoint.
Or, like, almost nihilism, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, like, very, like, nihilistic in the fact that, like, yeah, like, it would be great, like, what I'm saying, if we had a more, like, child-first society.
Mm-hmm.
But I also get the viewpoint of, like, is that ever going to happen? Would people ever abide by that? And the problem is that, like, I do think, actually, this is the perfect fucking time to bring this up. I think if as a collective we made that change, I think it could happen. I think it's a very, very real possibility.
Yeah.
However, like, will it ever come to fruition?
Yeah. Yeah. That's my exact stance on it, is that I do think that the majority of people would be personally, like, fine with changing the way we do things and starting anew and making something that is, like you said, child first, and also, like, limit the amount of suffering that we all have to exist in. But I also think that there are a select few of people who severely benefit from that system and have made it a point that they are able to make those changes. Like, they're the ones who are literally at the top making those changes. And so do I think that that is going to necessarily happen anytime soon? Not really. And this is also something we were talking about before. I don't know if we're at a point in time where humans are, I don't want to say, like, intelligent enough, but, like, intelligent enough to understand that if we stood all as one collective, we could make those changes. This was something that I was telling Casey earlier, but there was this experiment, I guess, that my teacher used to do when I was going to college. One of my sociology professors, she basically told us that we didn't have to take the final exam if all of us didn't come to the final exam. Like, she would just give us 100 if no one showed up. And there has not been a year as of my class, I don't know if that's happened since I've graduated, but as of my class, there had never been a year where she had had a class that did not show up for the final. At least one or a few people had shown up, and she has never had a class that fully banded together and didn't show up for the final. And I think that speaks to the fact that we don't understand that if we banded together and we all said the same exact thing, we could get shit done. But the fact of the matter is that most people don't get the power that we have as a collective. And not only does that not bring about change, but it also harms the people who are the ones who are not banding together. In that example, if we had all band together, then we would have all gotten 100 on the final. But because people did not want to do that and they showed up for the final anyway, well, now some people are getting zeros, some people are getting 80s. The people who are showing up are probably not going to get 100 on the test. And so not only are you creating suffering for others, but you're creating suffering for yourself by not banding together and creating a world that makes sense for everyone.
And that is just, like, the perfect metaphor for humans.
Yeah.
And, like, that is why I do understand, like, the viewpoints of antinatalism, because I do think in that sense it's, like, there are humans who are obviously intelligent and who are the ones who are, like, progressing the species. But then there are the other humans who, like, are very clearly, like, not evolved yet.
Yeah.
From a psychological standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, like, how it is, and I think that's just, like, the reality of the world. Yeah, I think that's, like, the unfortunate reality, and I think that's, like, ultimately where my viewpoint with antinatalism lies.
Yeah.
I think my other viewpoint with antinatalism comes from the Redditors who are antinatalists, who are honestly, like, a different breed of antinatalists, because, speaking of, they'll use the term, like, breeders.
Mm-hmm.
And shit like that, which is just, like, so incel vibes.
Yeah, for real.
And, like, don't use a philosophical movement to excuse the fact that, like, you just can't get pussy.
Literally, exactly. Like, that's where I, like, stop with the anti-natalist movement, because, like, exactly, like, there are people who are, like, so far gone, and I just don't agree with that kind of stuff where, like, making fun of other people or using, like, slurs that we create for other people.
It's just embarrassing for them.
Yeah, it's literally embarrassing.
Like, if you are using the term breeder, I will not take anything you say seriously. I'm just not gonna do it. I refuse.
Because, like, realistically, like, this topic is supposed to be something that is morally and ethically debated. It's a philosophy. And philosophies are not laws. They are not meant to be pushed onto others. They are meant to be discussed and studied and
developed, honestly.
Yeah, develop and have academic discussions around them. They're not meant to be, like, forced down other people's throats one way or the other, right? Like, I don't think that the other way should also be forced onto people in terms of pro-natalism, right? Like, I don't think that we should be forcing people to have kids either, because I think that that's where, like, a lot of, number one, anti-natalists have come from, but number two, like, I think that's where we've come to today, is people are becoming child-free because they don't want people to, like, talk to them about fucking kids anymore. Like, my life as someone with a uterus should not be focused around having children. I don't care about having children. Like, and I also think that, like, we forget to talk about, like, men in this equation as well. Like, I think women oftentimes get this, like, huge push of, like, when are you having kids? When are you having kids? When are you sitting down? Like, that's something that we, like, are supposed to strive for and, like, achieve, and that's, like, when you become an adult is when you get married and have kids, and that's stupid. It's literally just fucking dumb. Yeah. That's a dumb fucking argument. But I also think that men are supposed to be, like, considered, like, real mature adults when they have that happen as well. And I think that's fucking dumb, too. Like, we shouldn't be pushing people into having children, number one, if they don't want them, and number two, if they're not mature enough to have them. If you're not mature enough to have a child, having a child's not going to bring you maturity. Yeah. Like, it's literally not. No. And, like, I do think that everyone's life path is meant to be different, and I think we're all meant to do things at different times and have different experiences, but, like, pushing someone into having a child is fucking dumb. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. And I hate the argument of, well, I want grandkids, or, oh, you'll change your mind when you get older.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
First of all, I don't care that you want grandkids. That is a weird thing to say to someone. It's really weird and creepy, and, like, I don't understand.
Selfish, obviously.
It's incredibly selfish. More selfish than having kids just because you fucking want them. Yeah. Like, why would you, if you are going to have children, why would you force them onto a life path that you were also forced onto and may or may not regret yourself? That's weird.
Well, that's the funny thing, is that I feel like a lot of the people who do say stuff like that, like, hate their own children.
Yeah, but it's also, like, if you want grandkids so bad, then have them yourself. That's not my problem.
I mean, not for nothing, Cassie, that's not how grandchildren work. Not to defend these people, but...
Oh, well, I don't know. I'm sure you could find a child to grand.
I'm not even gonna... there's no comeback for that. But I will say that, like, the problem with the growing movement of, like, being child-free is that now it's leaving all of the people who shouldn't be parents to be parents, and all of the people who, again, no one should be forced to be a parent, but typically the people who, like, have, like, moral and ethical bounds, who would be better at being that caretaker, are not the ones who are caretakers. Yeah. And that is the dilemma here. Yeah. Unfortunately. For sure. Because obviously, again, everyone should have their own personal choice, but, like, it's weeding out the good people.
Yeah, the dumb ones are the ones having kids.
Yeah, now. Exactly.
Not that, like, all parents are dumb, but, like, most of them are. Yeah. And it's just, like, I don't know, like... Maybe just, like, don't have kids.
And, like, I'm not pro-sterilization.
Yeah. I'm not pro-forced sterilization.
Yes.
Yeah.
But some people, they should just be sterile. I'm sorry.
Like, born that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish that we evolved to, if you had, like, under a certain IQ, you were just, like, born without, like, reproductive organs. I wish that was, like, the next evolution of humans.
We can make that happen, I'm sure.
Eugenics.
Yeah, exactly.
The only good kind.
That's actually a really interesting point that you brought up, because I wanted to bring up this argument that happened on Twitter a long time ago.
Oh, God.
But there was this whole argument based around the fact that, like, people were saying that people who are poor should not be having kids, and that if you want to have kids, you should have a certain level of comfort in your life. And then there's this whole argument on Twitter saying that, like, telling poor people that they shouldn't have kids is eugenics. Like, you shouldn't be telling poor people not to have children and blah, blah. And that it's unfairly targeting people of color and stuff like that, which I do understand to some degree, because I do think that, like, number one, it's kind of unfair to say that all poor people are people of color, but I do think that particularly in America, we have forced a lot of people of color to live in poverty because of literally, like, laws and history and generational wealth not being distributed equally, and redlining, and, you know, things that we've talked about before, and also things that you could literally just Google search. Like, we have a very long history of racism, and that racism contributes to poverty among people of color, and I totally get that. But at the same time, irregardless of if we're talking about people of color or white people or whatever, right? I don't know how much I love that argument. Again, I don't believe in telling people what to do. I think that if that's the choice that you want to make and you think that's the best choice for you, or maybe you don't have a choice, but that's kind of just where your life ends up, then, you know, more power to you. And I truly hope that you do get the help that you need. And again, like, I think that when it comes to people who live in poverty, like, we should be supporting them a lot more and helping them out and giving more public funds to people who are then parents and can't take care of their children financially, like, kind of the whole point of having a tax system in general. But ultimately, do I think that we should be telling poor people to have children? Not necessarily. I think it's a fair argument to say that if you have the choice to have children, it is a better choice to be in a more financially stable situation before you have children. Again, I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that poor people shouldn't have children, but if they have the choice between being poor and child-free and then working towards being more financially stable and then having children at that point in time, I think that's a fair argument, and I don't think that's eugenics in any way.
I also think there's a difference between being, like, poor and being, like, incapable of, like, feeding your child. Like, if you can't feed, clothe, house a child, then, like, I don't think you should have one. Just because, like, you're not, like, even, like, middle class.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, like, I think you're a bad person for having children. But it's the same thing kind of like with pets. It's like, if you cannot feed your pet, then you shouldn't have one.
Yeah.
And, like, I think that's where it comes down to. It's like, if you cannot provide basic needs, then that's when I kind of draw the line. Because that's just unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, this little person does not have the ability to go out and, like, get food on their own. Like, they depend on you. And if, like, you are literally not providing them with a source of food and safety, then, like, that's just not fair to them.
Yeah. Well, and I also, too, think that, again, this is where, like, I kind of understand where people come from when it comes to antinatalists, because at the same time, like, it really depends, right? Like, if you are someone who is in a really tough situation and then you end up having a child, like, how is that different from someone who was in a really good financial situation and then becomes severely impoverished?
Oh, for sure. It's
Do you know
so
what I mean?
unfair to have a blanket statement about it.
Exactly. Like, it's a very nuanced position to have, and it's just a very nuanced conversation, right? And again, that's where I'm like, well, if I'm going to have bad things happen in my life, which inevitably there's going to be things that happen, like, I can't control the things that happen, right? Like, I personally know people who have gone from millions to zero, like, in the span of a couple months, and it's not necessarily their fault. It just is what happened. And then they lost everything, right? And it's unpredictable. Like, you don't know what's going to happen, and we are not set up in a way where we support people who are impoverished. Yeah. And obviously I disagree with that, but it's also the reality of life, particularly in America. I can't speak to other countries, but as I see it as an American in America, like, we are not set up to financially support people who are impoverished and who have lost everything or begin with nothing and continue to have nothing. Yeah. And that's where it's like, well, why should I subject a little person to that, like, way of life? Like, I don't know what's going to happen, right? And so why should I subject someone else to not knowing what's going to happen? Again, I don't necessarily think that it's fair to say that, like, no one should have children just because life is chaotic. But it's why I wouldn't want to have kids, because I don't know what's going to happen. But again, do I think that that's eugenics to have an opinion of people should be more financially stable than not before having kids? I don't think so, because again, it's an opinion and it was on Twitter. You know what I mean? Like, I think that sometimes people take opinions way too seriously. Yeah. And that's kind of where my stance comes with antinatalism as well. Like, it's a moral philosophy. It is a discussion that we can have about, like, different nuances and different topics, and we can go back and forth on it. But it's not... It's an opinion. It's a philosophy. It's not dictating anyone's life.
Well, that's where I do also become frustrated with people who identify as antinatalist instead of viewing it as simply that of a philosophy instead of, like, an identity that you have to hold on to.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you can have your viewpoint and it doesn't have to be a me against you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's not a fight. It doesn't have to be a fight. It can be a debate. But it doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be like, I'm attacking you because of your beliefs. Like, we can just have a moral discussion. And I do understand to some degree that, like, a lot of people, like, are very against antinatalism and will not even have a conversation about it. But at the end of the day, like, then don't have conversations with those people, because they're not going to get it. They're not going to understand it. Yeah. And you can go into Reddit communities or into Facebook communities or have a discussion with other philosophers or whatever, and you can have discussions like this in places where it is safe to do so. You don't have to talk to other people who are never going to agree with it. And I guess to some degree I get that, like, people do truly believe that, like, bringing children into this world is something that is harmful, and so for them, they do believe that, like, they are doing the right thing. But again, at the end of the day, you can't control other people's lifestyles, you can't control other people's opinions, and so it's kind of like you just have to exist and do your own thing. Instead of trying to control other people and taking away the only thing that I think is worth fighting for, which is your own free will.
Yeah. Very well said.
Thanks.
I have to bring this thing up because, like I said, like, the subreddit itself is it's either, like, very interesting or it's, like, you want to squeeze their fucking throats.
Yeah.
Like, there's this one post that I saw, and the caption of it is, okay, but it is literally true. And the post is a screenshot of, I guess, you know how everything now is, like, a screenshot of a tweet, of a, like, a Tumblr, but whatever it is. Yeah. It's all, like, layered. But anyway, I guess it's, like, a article title or something like that. And it says, man refuses to give up bus seat for pregnant woman, says pregnancy is her choice. And caption, it's not my fault she decided to have a baby when she can't afford a car. And then, like, again, the person in the subreddit is like, okay, but it is literally true. And it's people like that are just, like, so fucking insufferable.
Yeah. I agree.
Like,
you also don't know why she's taking the bus that day.
Well, that's the thing. Okay, to be fair, one of the comments was, transit should not be viewed as something that you use because you're poor.
Yeah.
Which this is a whole other discussion of, like, public transportation.
Mm-hmm.
But, oh my god.
Yeah, for real.
It's Get gross. A grip.
Get a life.
Get a life.
Yeah.
Good fucking heavens.
Because at the end of the day, like, yeah, like, it is something that you chose, but it's still also a difficult thing that you have to go through, right? Like, it's still hard to be pregnant, and you should still be, not, like, given necessarily, like, special treatment, but at the same time, like, maybe you should be.
Honestly, I think you kind of should be. I don't know. That's where those kind of antinatalists, like, they do seem like anti-child.
Yeah.
They do seem like they genuinely just fucking hate children. And it's like, how are you anti, like, child suffering, and then also, like, want children to suffer in the same fucking sentence?
No, that's exactly my point as well, because I joined a couple of different, like, groups on antinatalism and stuff just for research on this podcast, and a lot of people are saying, like, such insufferable things about children, like, how annoying they are, and how horrible they are, and how they would never, like, want a child because all they do is scream and poop and cry, and, like, yeah, they do scream and poop and cry, so do you.
Yeah.
And, like, look,
that's what babies do.
Yeah. And listen, like, there was a time in my life where I wasn't, like, I don't know, I guess I was sort of, like, anti-child, but it was more of, like, this rejection of, like, the idea that I should have children just because, like, I have a uterus, and that's kind of where, like, my quote-unquote, like, anti-childness came from.
Which, again, to be fair, like, children are annoying, they are gross, they are, like, especially babies are ugly. They're very ugly. And, like, that is just, like, hashtag facts.
It's hashtag facts,
It's
right?
hashtag facts.
But
that doesn't mean you should hate them.
Well, no, and it's also, like, realistically, like, they wouldn't be so fucking annoying if we had a society that was more situated for them to be in. Right. Like, they wouldn't be crying so much if we, like, had places where they didn't have to fucking sit there and cry.
Yeah.
Like, if we had places where it was more accommodating for children, of course there's still going to be kids that cry and scream and have tantrums and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like, it's going to be easier to handle them, and at the same time, it's also going to happen less because you have the accommodations to take care of them and to also give them some, like, space for them to be themselves, right? Yeah. Like, it's not that fucking hard. And, like, also, there are a lot of cultures and communities where, like, it's just more accepted that children are going to be in spaces, and so they kind of just don't care. And it's more like you aren't always trying to, like, shush your child. Like, people just don't really care as much. Whereas I think in America, we are kind of inherently anti-child. Like, we want all these children to be, like, sitting still and quiet and everything else, and that's not how children work and exist. And instead of, like, just kind of allowing them to be children, we want them to be mini adults, and then we get mad when they aren't. And I think that's a cultural problem and not necessarily, like, a child problem.
I agree. I think, like, in a sense, we're not necessarily anti-child, but we're anti, like, childlike behavior.
Yeah.
Where it's, like, we're anti, like, expressing emotion. We're anti, like, play. Mm-hmm. We're anti, like, understanding and feeling and learning.
Well, because that also doesn't exist for adults either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But exactly, that's, like, why I feel it is that way. Because, like, in a way we do, like, emphasize children. Mm-hmm. But we don't like them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, something to compare it to is, like, women. And it's, like, we hold women on such a pedestal, but, like, anything that's feminine is rejected.
Yeah.
And it's, like, we don't, it's, like, femininity that we dislike. It's childlike behavior that we dislike. It's not necessarily the woman. It's not necessarily the child. It's, like, the behavior or the, like, description of what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where it's, like, we live in such, like, a, like, sorry, but we do live in a patriarchy. We live in such, like, a tough, like, masculine culture where, like, anything that's not held to that standard, regardless of who they are or what they are, it's rejected.
It's a really good
And that's sad.
I think that has a lot to do with, like, our this continuation of holding on to the American dream that literally has never existed in our entire lives.
That's why it's the American dream.
Yeah.
Because it was never a reality.
But I think I agree, it's, like, this idea that we all have to be, like, stoic and, like, tough, and, like, we can't have emotions, we can't be sensitive, we can't play, like, you're a horrible person if you, like, climb a tree, like, what are you talking about? Like, why aren't people allowed to just exist? Or
That's
this
like
is something we've talked about before, like
third spaces.
well, there's third spaces, but also like anti-lawyering is so weird.
Yes.
It's so weird that you can't exist outside without having the cops called on you.
Bro, it's so, and like, it won't even be like just outside of a business. It's like you literally can't be anywhere without like someone questioning while you're there. Like, why can't I just exist here for no reason?
Why am I not allowed to be outside?
Yeah.
Like, that's weird.
Isn't that the point of a public space, is to be in a space that's public?
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird that you're not allowed to just exist outside. It's weird that we don't have spaces where we don't have to, like, continuously spend money to exist in them. We can just go with our friends and hang out, or family or whatever, and hang out and meet new people and, like, just kind of have a good time without having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to, like, exist at, like, a restaurant or, like, at a bar or, like, whatever. Like, there's so, like, few public parks anymore, or like cafes where you can just sit and hang out instead of like having to spend a ton of money. Like, it's ridiculous. And again, I think that also contributes to the fact that we are so anti-child, because if I'm going to go, or childlike behavior, like you said, like if I'm going to go to a restaurant and spend $150 on a meal for 2 people, I don't want a kid fucking screaming. But if I was to go to a restaurant and have 1 beer and be able to just hang out with my friends, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Because I'm not spending so much money. It's not so much about the experience. It's more about being with people and having community and just, like, being alive, right?
Yeah.
In comparison to, like, going and wanting to spend all this money and having, like, this perfect experience and having the atmosphere be perfect and the service be perfect and everything has to be perfect, and now this kid's screaming.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And, like, I think that's a very, like, important point to make.
Yeah.
Where it's, like, not only do we lack the spaces, but the spaces that we do get to exist in, it's, like, we have an expectation of what it's supposed to be like experience-wise.
Yeah.
When that gets, like, ruined, like, we blame what we think is ruining it.
Exactly.
Which, like, a child crying is, like, again, like, yeah, like, it can be annoying, but, like, it's a child. It's just, like, part of, yeah. It's just, like, a part of life.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, you were once a child, you once screamed and shit and whatever all over the place, like, and also, not for nothing, but these fucking people are sitting here screaming at 16-year-old servers.
Right.
But you're getting angry because, like, a kid right at the other table is screaming because you're having a mental breakdown because, like, your steak is medium and not medium well. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And, like, listen, like, I was in the service industry for a long time. Like, I've literally dealt with people like that who, like, just fucking have no regard for anyone else, or just screaming at the top of their lungs over literally the most minor problem that can be fixed in an instant. And those are the same people who are going to have issues with, like, a child screaming next to them.
Yeah.
Because, like, they have no ability to, like, see outside themselves. And I think that's, like, what you're saying before, is that, like, we not only exist in a culture where we don't agree with childlike behavior, but we literally are not raising fully formed adults.
Well, that's, like, honestly, as you were saying that, I was like, I wonder if part of it is subconsciously because, like, they're mirroring themselves, and it's, like, as a child, you're allowed to freely express that.
Yeah.
But, like, as an adult, you're not allowed to, and it, like, comes out as, like, frustration, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like all these pent-up emotions that you were not allowed to experience as a child, and now that you're an adult and you're allowed to lash out at people and be angry, like, you just do it all the time instead of understanding how to regulate your own emotions.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, that's why, like, I think this kind of has to be more of a philosophy and a debate rather than, like, a strict belief.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because at the end of the day, it's like, how can you be so angry at people who literally have no ability to control themselves because they were not raised properly, because they were once children who came up and only understood suffering and have to go through life suffering constantly, and it's not fair. And that's where, like, again, I think personally, like, I'm just not equipped to handle all of that, and so I'm just not going to have kids because I don't want to have to deal with it. And it's maybe that's also selfish. Maybe I'm also selfish for not having kids, but at the end of the day, like, I'd rather not
contribute.
Don't want to contribute to that. And also, you can't control what you have, right? Like, you can't control if you have someone who again, is severely disabled. Nothing against people who are disabled, but I don't know if I personally would
Cancelled.
have... Yeah, I'm right. But I don't know if I'd personally be able to, like, take care of someone for the rest of my life. Like, I don't know if I have not even just, like, the mental capacity for that, but also the physical capability to do that. Or the financial stability to do that either.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if I'd be able to handle having a child who's a horrible person.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to deal with that.
Like, I think I've gotten a lot better, and I think I'm in, like, a better... I've just, like, matured more.
Yeah.
But I've thought about this before. Like, have you ever heard stories of, like, shaken baby syndrome?
Yeah.
And you're like, low-key, I could do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but, like, there are cases where I'm like, I have gotten to that fucking point where, like, if I was 18 and had a child and was forced to have that child and, like, did not have another option but to raise it, I can't guarantee that I wouldn't have abused it.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna be straight up because, like, I did not have the fucking capability of controlling my own fucking anger at that point.
Yeah.
And if something pissed me off that much, there were times when I lost empathy. Mm-hmm. And again, like, I'm maturing and growing, and, like, do I want kids right now? No, I'm certainly not in that place. But, like, do I think I could get to that place eventually? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But, like, was I once, like, not equipped for something like that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, like,
No, I
that's
agree.
why, like, those kind of situations, like, yes, obviously shaking a child is not a good thing. It's very, like, disgusting and...
Shake those babies.
Shake that fetus.
Shake them like a Polaroid picture.
Oh my god. Okay. Dropping this new song.
Right.
Wait, okay. For every problematic episode, or no, every episode that we ever make, we now have to make a song for it.
Oh, that's a challenge.
Challenge accepted.
Shake that fetus. Shake that fetus.
Literally.
Rattle, rattle, rattle.
Rattle, rattle, ga, ga. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Musician.
That was good.
I know.
I'm shook.
So is the baby.
Oh my god, should we title this episode Shaken Baby Syndrome?
No, it should be Shake That Baby Syndrome.
Oh my god.
I can't. Where do we even go from here? But, like, that's why, again, there's that, like, duality to it of, do I agree with abusing children? Obviously fucking not.
Yeah.
But also, like, can I comprehend how people get to the point of losing empathy for another being? Yes.
And being so angry and frustrated.
I have fucking been there. And honestly, like, sure, maybe there are some people who haven't, but, like, I can guarantee most people have gotten to that point. Mm-hmm. Have I ever acted on it? No. Have a lot of people that acted on it? No. But have some people gotten to that point where it just, like, something in them just fucking flipped? Yes. Mm-hmm. And, like, do I think that it's fair to just write those people off as monsters? No. I think it's a very human thing to feel emotion, and exactly like we're fucking saying, if you never have the ability to mature and control your emotion, you're going to fucking snap.
Yeah.
And that comes right back down to being able to learn it as a child.
Right. Yeah.
And everything just fucking comes full circle.
Exactly. But again, it's also like, is it fair to subject another being to that anger?
To that possibility?
Yeah, to the possibility.
No, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like, again, there's
it benefits no one.
Right. Exactly.
Sadly, it benefits fucking no one.
No. So I feel like ultimately the whole conclusion to this discussion, if you want to draw any conclusions to it, is don't have kids. But number 2 is that, like, if you do end up having kids,
don't shake them.
Don't or do. I don't know. But I think ultimately it's like just do what's best for you and like just
and
do
consider
better.
The life form that you're creating.
Yeah, but do better for our kids because they deserve a lot more than what they've been given, and do what like wasn't done for you.
That's what I was gonna say is like not only did the kids deserve better, but like you deserved better too.
Yeah.
So do better so that we can all accept better.
Yes, exactly. And we all like deserve to live in a world where we aren't constantly suffering.
Yeah.
We really do. Like it's all just man-made. Like we're all just pretending like it's fine, but it's not fine.
It's not.
Yeah.
We're literally prophets. Do you hear us? Where's our fucking soapbox?
We literally gave it to ourselves. We're literally that guy in the corner that everyone walks past and is like fucking on crack, but is still like rambling out like fucking hits after hits.
We are the new coming of Christ.
Check it, bitches.
Okay, but Lil Nas X just put out J Christ.
I know, I saw that.
And, like, honestly, it's time. It's time for the real prophets to shine.
The rebirth.
AKA us and Lil Nas X. The only three.
Collab.
Literally. Oh my god. Could we add our, like, Shake That Fetus verse to that song?
Oh my god.
That would be kind of epic, actually.
That would be pretty epic. Lil Nas X, if you're listening.
He should be listening.
Yeah, he should be. I think he'd like this podcast.
He would love this podcast.
Thank God. All right.
Well, that about sums it up.
Yeah.
You're so fucking welcome. And if you've made it through, you probably have shaken baby syndrome by now.
Yeah, we've given you shaken baby syndrome
virtually.
Happy 2024!
Happy 2020 fucking 4. Happy season 2.
Happy season 2. Welcome to Problematic.
Welcome. And with that,
bye! Thank you for listening to Bell on Earth, the podcast. We hope that your minds have been expanded and your pussies have been opened.
Be sure to rate and follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music.
This podcast is brought to you by Free Studio Productions. It's hosted and produced by Cassidy and Casey Bell. Big thanks to our executive producer, Dark Benton.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for all of your content needs. See you later, haters.